you must learn the plant cell and the animal cell. But what is more important is that you need to know each structure in a cell and what their function is. Now, before we move on to the actual diagram, I just want to show you a basic concept. There we go. Is we start off with cells. Okay? And the little cells, well, a whole bunch of them, group together to form tissue. So it would form one layer of tissue. And a whole lot of tissues group together to form an organ. I must be careful of not having my hand anywhere near here. Organ. And quite a number of organs will work together to work as a system. And all the systems in the body coordinate and work together to form an organism. And we went through this, remember, last week if you were watching. We have cells, lots of cells together form tissue, lots of tissues form organs, an organ. Various organs will form a system, and the systems together make you. So let's look at an example. Let's get another color here. Okay, cells, let's say, I'm trying to think, cardiac cells. Okay, cardiac should tell you that you're going to find them in the heart. Okay, so your cardiac, all your different little cardiac cells will join together to form the tissue that makes up the heart tissue. Okay, and that heart tissue will end up joining to form the heart. Right? And the heart plus the lungs plus the heart plus the lungs, I'm trying to think, plus your blood vessels, so your arteries and your veins, all join together to form your cardiopulmonary system, and that supplies and pumps oxygenated blood and to the heart and to the rest of the body, and carbon dioxide away from all the organs, and it makes sure that our organism is fine. So we may have the circulatory system. Okay, and you'd have the respiratory, respire, to breathe, respiratory system. You have the digestive system, and they all are made up of cells that group together to form tissue, that groups together to form an organ, that groups together to form a system, that groups together to make us an organism. In other words, everything is coordinated and works properly together. And that is the function of the brain and the nervous system. All right, so, which you're clearly going to do at a later stage. So now, having said that, we've got two types of cells in the body. Two types of cells that you are going to do. You are going to go through a plant cell and its basic structure, and the animal cell and its basic structure. These are not specialized, these are general structures of the cells. Okay, but for example, when you get further on in the FET phase, you are going to learn, like for example in grade 11, you are going to do the different types of cells for animal and plant tissues. So you've got the xylem and you've got the phloem, which transports water and nutrients up the plant, and the phloem water and mineral salts, and then the phloem that transports water and dissolved nutrients up and down the plant. You're going to have those little root hairs. You're going to have stomata in the leaves. All these different cells that help those organs to function. In us, you've got, for example, epithelial cells, which line any structure that is exposed to anything that either goes out of the body or comes in the body. So you'd have squamous epithelium here in your mouth and in your rectum, for example. You would have cuboidal epithelium in your urinary tubes. You would so it carries on. I mean, I'm now telling you different types of cells, and maybe when it gets to that section in grade 11, you'll think, oh, hang on, we did that, I know that. But just remember squamous cells in the mouth. They are the most basic epithelial cells you can get. Then you've got striated muscle cells, which is your skeletal muscles, which you do when you do the skeleton in grade 11. When you go to grade 12 and you have to do the reproductive system and you have to do the nucleus and the whole process of genetics and nucleic acids, you have to know the basic functions of cells, people. So we're going to talk about a cell. Now remember, inside any cell, I need actually a blank page. So I'm going to do this and see if I have any blank pages here. Yes. Okay. Oh, let's try this one. There we go. You have a cell. Inside that cell, we have little structures called organelles. So, people, we're going to go one step further. We're going to say, right, we start off with organelles. The organelles make up a cell. Lots of different cells make up tissue. Lots of layers of tissue make an organ. And many organs make one system. Lots of systems make the organism. And that applies to plants and to animals. So now we are going to be looking at the cell. And there are two types. Okay? There's plant and animal. So plant cells, you will find, are always classified, or any classification as a plant cell means it has a cell wall. That's what makes a plant cell what it is. And different to an animal cell, because an animal cell never, ever, ever has a cell wall. Now, the cell wall in a plant is made of cellulose, and it is able to assist the plant in helping it with its structure. Okay? So, here we have our plant cell, and I'm going to show you a line diagram, and if I ask you to do anything, learn this. Okay? You will, in any test and in any exam, get either an animal cell or a plant cell that you would need to label parts of. You would be asked about the structure versus the function. So, think about this. Structure and function. If I have something and it has, if I had a glass and a plate, okay, would I put my dinner, let's say I have meat and potatoes and vegetables, okay? Potatoes and vegetables, so meat and vegetables. Would I have my meat and vegetables on a plate, or would I stick it in my glass? And you're all laughing and saying, oh, for heaven's sake. Well, those are the kind of errors you make in class because you don't think. It's structure. The flat plate is structured to suit food. And the glass or container, long cylindrical container, is designed and structured to suit my liquid, because I can't put liquid in a plate. I'd have to lick it up like a cat or a dog. Okay, so everything you do from now to grade 12 is structure versus function. If a thing looks a certain way, whatever the structure is, it is specific because it is to perform a function. All right, so any fold that you see anywhere in any structure will tell you if there is a fold, it increases the surface area. In other words, the area that is exposed to the surrounding sides. All right, so simple things like that. Those are basics that you need to know. You must know your definitions. And this goes for the grade 10s, the 11s, the 12s, the grade 8s, and the grade 9s, same thing. In life sciences, learn your diagrams so that you know the structures, and learn the function of those structures. And if you know that, you know your definitions. So learn your definitions. All right, so here we go. The plant cell. Now you'll notice this light green structure all the way around. And that light green structure is what we call, okay, I'm going to need a color here, otherwise you're not, and I'm sitting with this red. Here is the cell wall. Now, cell wall is rigid. It's made of, heaven's sake, cellulose, and the cellulose is a carbohydrate. It's a polysaccharide, and it gives the whole cell, and therefore the plant, it provides it with structure and support and shape, because this is rigid. So this cell can't like billow out here or have a rounded shape unless the cell wall is rounded. So the cell wall provides structure versus function. The cell wall is made of cellulose, you must know that, and it provides structure, shape, and support to the plant cell. Very important. And in animals, there are no cell walls. Okay, only in plant cells, not animal cells. So that's one difference already. Then we have this structure here, which is right next to it, and I'm going to do this, and that is the cell membrane. Now, plant and animal cells have a cell membrane, and pretty much, if you are going to talk about anything moving into a cell or out of a cell from now until you are an old person with regards to this subject or any biological or science field, you must know that this cell membrane is a shared characteristic between plants and animals. And we can link that back to evolution, where they say, and the theory is that it's one of the theories that they say backs up the fact that we all came from some little explosion that happened in the middle of the sea, all right? And the organisms became more and more and more complex. But the fact that animal cells and plant cells share cytoplasm, they share nuclei, they share vacuoles, they share cell membranes, all points to a commonality between plants and animals. Now remember, it's a theory. That's all, the whole diversity, evolution, blah, 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 all of that is purely theory. No one can prove it. Nobody lived 500 million years ago. All right, so it's just a theory. But it's one of the things that they say, or one of the aspects that they say, tends to point to the fact that animals and plants had the same origin. All right, so the plant cells, they develop cell walls, and then you've got your cell membrane, which sits right against the cell wall. The cell membrane, this is just a sort of a diagram to show you what I tried to draw. But remember, in an exam, you're going to have to draw it and label it, not something pretty 3D like or 2D like this, but that yellow shows you your protein channel. Those are your little phosphates and they're your lipids, and they form like a double layer. All right, now having said all of this, I'm going, oh, by the way, this website is amazing. You can see the most incredible animations and processes here on this website. So just have a look at it. It's KYRK.com, and on there you'll be able to pick up cell membranes, cell wall, nucleus, etc. It's nice to play. Alrighty, now let's make this go up. Osmosis and diffusion. Okay. Well, let's go with pink. All right, so we have osmosis and diffusion. You need to understand the difference. Okay, diffusion is what I'm going to do first. Diffusion is something very, very simple. Okay, in that with diffusion, it is just an equilibrium that is reached. Okay. So diffusion will continue until it gets to that equilibrium. So for example, if I make a cup of tea and I put 2 spoons of sugar in, but I don't stir the tea, and I leave it for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, when I drink the tea, it's going to taste sweet. Why? Because the molecules of the sugar has moved around in the tea. Another one would be if I took air freshener and I sprayed just a squirt of air freshener in the front of a class. Who'd smell it first? Well, clearly me. But, because I'd be the closest to it, but then the first row of learners, and then the next row of learners, and then the next, and then the next, and then the next. And as the molecules of the spray spreads evenly into the class. And if someone walked into the class, they would smell something really nice. So that would be an example of diffusion. It is when any substance moves from a high concentration to a lower concentration, okay, until an equilibrium is reached. So diffusion is the movement of a substance, whether it is solid, liquid, or gas, from a higher concentration downhill to a lower concentration. We say that it moves along the concentration gradient, okay, until an equilibrium is reached. I'm going to say that again. Diffusion is when the particles of a substance move from a higher concentration, so where there's more, to a lower concentration where there is less, along the concentration gradient until an equilibrium is reached. Always an equilibrium. And something that is very important is that with diffusion, there is no membrane. Okay, there is no membrane at all. You can have it in the air, you can have it in a cup of tea, you can have it when you put chlorine in your swimming pool. All right, it is diffusion. High to a low concentration along the concentration gradient until an equilibrium is reached. In other words, until the high has spread so much to the low that it starts to tip up and even out like a seesaw. Now, osmosis. And osmosis is very, very easy. Osmosis would be if I had a hill. And over here I've got a chap. Okay, now please, I don't know, I'm not good at drawing. This little guy has got a skateboard. Now he wants to go uphill. This is low. This is low. This would be low. And this is high. Okay, so what happens? This little guy takes his skateboard and he walks uphill. which means he's going against the, I'm just going to do that, CONC gradient. Remember, we're talking about concentrations, but I'm using an analogy to show you. So he's going to walk uphill with his skateboard. He's going against the concentration gradient. He's going against the concentration gradient. He's going uphill, and he's going to need ATP. ATP is energy. All right. So anything that you read, for example, if you're a bit of a gym bunny and you look at all those supplements and it says it gives you ATP. ATP, or causes the release of ATP, ATP is an energy carrier. It's adenosine, which is a protein, with 3 phosphates. And the energy is in the bond between the adenosine molecule and the phosphates. So you'll have adenosine diphosphate, 2 phosphates. It goes to where energy is being made, for example, the mitochondria, because that's the function of the mitochondria. It is the powerhouse of a cell, and both plant and animal cells have a mitochondria. In fact, you have many mitochondria in cells. Okay, so you have the adenosine plus the 2 phosphates. It goes to where energy is being made, and the energy is used to combine that little phosphate onto the adenosine, the 3rd phosphate onto the adenosine. And it scoots off to where energy is needed. When it gets there, that phosphate breaks off, it breaks free, and that energy then goes to wherever it's needed. You must know that. All right, so we need ATP, we go from a high to a low, because you're going against the concentration gradient. But look at this one, and I'm going to use a different color. We're going to go from high to low. So once this little chap is up here, he gets on his skateboard and he goes whee all the way downhill. He's going along the concentration gradient. Does he need energy for this? No, he doesn't need any energy. Why? Because it's downhill. But he's going from what we call a higher to a lower what? Not concentration. He's going from a potential. His potential to be high to his potential to be low. So in osmosis, we don't talk about concentration, we talk about potential. And specifically, it is water potential. And the little sign for potential looks like that. So, in short, if we were to define it, we would say, I'm going to pick purple for this, that osmosis is the movement of, and we can't see this, so we go back to white. It's the movement of water, okay, only. We're only talking about water. From a high water potential to a low water potential, and it's going along that concentration gradient, okay? But you can never, ever, ever, and close your eyes and hear my voice, you can never have an equilibrium with osmosis. Not ever. All right, because the solutes that change that gradient cannot move through the membrane. They can't. So you can never have an equilibrium with osmosis. Whereas with diffusion, you can. So along the concentration gradient and through a partially permeable membrane. Okay, so listen. People, here we go. It is osmosis. Osmosis is the movement of water, not any substance, only water, from a higher water potential to a lower water potential, along the concentration gradient Okay? Will there ever be an equilibrium? No, through a partially permeable membrane. So, diffusion, movement of any substance from a higher concentration where there is more to a lower concentration where there is less, along that concentration gradient until an equilibrium is reached. Osmosis is the movement of water from a higher water potential, okay, because it's purer, it's got more potential, higher water potential to a lower water potential where things are mixed in. Along that concentration gradient, and it has to move through a partially or semi or differentially permeable membrane. If water moves anywhere and it doesn't go through the membrane, it is diffusion. What makes them different is that it is water moving through a membrane. That is what osmosis is. Now, quick, let's go back here because I still want to go through the plant cell.
Sure, we've got 2 minutes, eh?
Oh no, man, this is ridiculous. I need more time. All right, so with osmosis, that's what we have. But if we look at, I'm going to use lime green here, this part of my little hill, where we needed ATP and going against that concentration gradient, this poor little thing needs energy. And your molecule will have to be carried from where there is less to where there is more. And that would be for every cell in your body, everywhere. You could have any substance where you have more in the cell than outside the cell. Intracellularly is inside. Inter is between. All right. Inter, between. Intra, inside. So to get anything intracellularly, where there's more, we now have to make a plan. So it's like our little chap with the skateboard. He's going to go against the concentration gradient from a higher to a lower concentration. And you know what? This little skateboard is the substance. It must be carried. It's carried by our little guy. So for active transport, it's the movement of a substance from a low concentration to a higher concentration against that concentration gradient. And you need energy, and you need a carrier molecule. Then it is active transport. And people, active transport, osmosis, and diffusion is in every exam. Please learn it. And you know what? You get it again in grade 11, and you get it again in grade 12. As far as the cell is concerned, which I didn't even get close to today, I mean, I did the cell wall and the cell membrane. Please learn the structures. The vacuole stores cell sap and water. Okay, the cytoplasm is where everything sits. Protoplasm is the nucleus and the organelles that float in the cytoplasm. So your protoplasm is the nucleus and the cytoplasm. All your hereditary characteristics are in your nucleus because that's where your chromosomes are. All right? And then you've got your vacuole, holds the water and cell sap. Plants have one big one, animals have lots of little ones. And remember, vesicles are any structure that holds another liquid within a liquid. So your vacuole would be a vesicle.
Grade 10s, you've been fantastic, and we'll see you next week. Bye.